As parents, we want to protect, to shelter our children from the realities of the world we live in. Well, right now, those realities include Ukraine, Russia, and a war happening thousands of miles away. So we often avoid those type of critical conversations, but my next guest says avoidance is not a strategy. In fact, Studio 5 parenting contributor Heather Johnson says these kind of conversations are crucial for our kids to feel a sense of safety and security. I'm so glad you're taking this on today. Thanks for being here. And granted, I have really young kids, but I'm guessing the strategy you're going to recommend is not waiting until they go to bed to watch any TV or hurrying to turn off the TV when they walk in the room. That's not what we're going to say today.
No, what we are going to focus on, though, is that when there is conflict, especially, our kids come to us to feel safe and secure. They seek us out. Now, they seek us out every day for safety and security, but especially in times of conflict. And that's what the pandemic, that's what war, that's what we're dealing with right now. That's what war is. It's this conflict. And they come to us and they need us to provide that sense of security and safety for them.
So don't avoid it.
So don't avoid it. And that's the first thing we're going to think about, is that avoidance is not a good strategy here. It isn't. Avoidance is not going to benefit anyone. Keeping them in the dark is not going to benefit them. But more important, when we avoid this, we actually avoid providing them the exact things that they need. So, you know, we want to avoid because I don't know what to say, or I'm not sure where to go with it, or I don't actually know what's going on between Russia and Ukraine, so I'm not quite sure how to deliver my message. Or maybe I just disagree. Or maybe I'm managing my own emotions, and as a result, I try to avoid having to have these conversations. What we're really avoiding is helping them feel safe and secure. And any parent wants that for their child. So we want to have these conversations for that reason. Right?
There's a lot of emotions swirling around this topic and a lot of feelings. And the first one that comes to mind is fear. We're all feeling a little fear around this, and we're coping with that in different ways. But those emotions and those feelings, you say, they're real, and they play a part in what we're going to do.
They're real. And more than that, they're contagious. I think it's what I'm seeing most often in my office right now is parents, especially moms, coming in and saying, man, my kids, they're kind of all over the place right now, and they're struggling falling asleep, and they're struggling with this, and they're not behaving very well. And what they're not realizing is their anxiety is actually rubbing off on their children. It's their feelings, and they're very contagious. And so their children are functioning as a result of their inability to manage their own emotions concerning a war across the world right now. And so we've got to know that they're contagious. Now, one of the best things we can do as parents when we're trying to have these conversations and help our children feel safe and secure is manage our own emotions, and do it by recognizing when our negative emotions are showing up. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling overwhelmed and fearful and worried, we got to get that under control, because it is contagious. It does bleed into the people that we're raising and that we're living with and that we're experiencing these things with. So we want to know that they're contagious and manage them. The other thing about feelings that's so important is however we manage this is modeling to our children how they should manage conflict. And so we want to be a really, really good role model.
Conflict of any kind.
Of any kind. Yeah. They'll do this again. They will see something uncomfortable in their lives again. We hope it's not a war, but the likelihood, we don't know. And so we want them to see what it's like and how it should be handled in a healthy way.
You want us to check our message. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, this one's tricky, but it's the message hopefully we've been giving our kids through a pandemic also. You know, through the pandemic, we were very quick to remind our kids of all the things they missed out on. Right? This one hits my heart. You know, we had a senior in high school at the time, and then he was a freshman in college. I mean, talk about being the ideal age to miss out on this, right?
Yes, they took those hits.
They took those hits. And now we have this war, and it's interrupting. It really is. It's like, can we not catch a break? It feels that way a little bit. And we were quick to send a message about all the things they missed. And it's kind of a bummer, and hopefully that wasn't the only thing our kids heard. Because the message that actually helps them is a recognition that as a result of being alive right now, they have the things they need to navigate these conflicts right now.
I can tell you're passionate about this point.
Very much so. They are here and they have a purpose for being here. They didn't come without what they need to navigate it. And the beautiful thing is, if they feel like there's skills they don't have, those skills exist right now and they can go get them. And so can we. What an amazing message to give our children, regardless of young or old right now, that, hey, look, you have what it takes to live here and navigate a war there.
It's actually the message, and I want to be careful in how I say this, and I hope the intention lands solidly, but it's the message I feel is missing from the mental health crisis, is this empowerment that we want to show up and respond to the symptoms and the needs and the emotions of these kids, but also, and let them know that they have what they need to work through it and overcome it. I feel like that's missing.
It is missing, and it shouldn't be missing in our homes. We can deliver that message. we can look at them and say, yes, this is conflict. Yes, this is war. Yes, there have been things that you didn't attend or get to do. And guess what? You have what you need to navigate it. That is a powerful message. It should be one that we hear in our heads, but man, we should be giving it to them every single day. That's the message we got to deliver. We've got to.
I love it. You want us to start with questions. What kind of questions?
Yeah, we want to find out what our kids know.
Okay.
So if you haven't looked at your kids yet and said, hey, have your teachers said anything about Russia and Ukraine?
So I tested my first grader last night, knowing, again, really little kids at my house, but knowing we were talking about this, I said, have you heard anything about Russia? And she said, what's Russia?
Yeah.
And that's where I knew I could just live for a minute, at least for now. Yeah.
Yeah, and now you know and can gauge the degree to which you need to give them information, the degree to which they might be afraid.
Yeah.
So asking those questions, are you hearing about this? What are you hearing about this? It also lets us straighten out things that they heard incorrectly, which they often do.
Yeah.
And it's really important that we can straighten those things out so that they know what they're hearing and we can help deliver that message. We want to help deliver the message, then we know what they're hearing. It's also a really good place to say, what are you afraid of? And if your first grader says, I don't know what Russia is, you know that there is not fear surrounding this going on right now.
Yeah.
But if all of a sudden, it's our junior in high school and she comes home and she says, well, this is what I hear and I'm kind of afraid. Does that mean the whole world is going to war? Then we can have that conversation. But we've got to start with those questions.
You touched on the insecurity of maybe not knowing the answers to some of those questions we're going to throw out. And I know for myself, I've done some serious history learning and refreshing and dusting off the last little while, trying to understand logistically what's happening. You say this can be a process to learn together and understand together.
Together. And the best place to start is just what you just said, which is learning those things, where this came from, why it's happening, what is going on. But we want to teach our kids right now and learn together. Where do you go for accurate sources, right? We want them to understand right now that learning from social media, that's not our best option.
Right.
In fact, if that's your primary source of information, we need to rethink our primary sources of information. And so this learning together allows us, one, to send the message and support the values that we want our children to subscribe to, because we're helping deliver the message. But when we learn together, we can lead and guide them so that they can duplicate this process when we're not sitting next to them helping. They've got to learn now these skills. It's just like reading and writing.
Yeah.
Our ability to cope with these things can be learned just like we learn to read. And we want to do that.
20 quick seconds, you want us to make sure that we're learning and discussing with compassion.
With compassion. And I think I'd throw in gratitude here too. The importance of having gratitude. Our social research supports that. But I think where we learn it, or where I've personally learned the power of this the most, is if you recall during the pandemic, President Russell M. Nelson spoke to the world. And I think everyone thought that, this religious leader was going to say whether we should wear masks or not, when the pandemic was going to end or not, what we do with vaccines. And he actually spoke to the entire world on Instagram Live, if I recall his platform, and asked us to be more grateful. He said, we get through hard things by showing more gratitude. If you want to know how we get through conversations about war, safety, security, managing this, we're more grateful, we're more compassionate. And it's just a beautiful thing to teach our children. They can do that the rest of their lives. Always.
I love it, Heather. Thank you so much. I needed a conversation that will translate to our homes, no doubt. Heather coaches and counsels parents and families. You can seek out her contact information on Studio 5's website.